Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Centre for Legal Innovation's Digital Literacy series. As you know, this is the second of a three-parter with our friends from LOD, looking at Office 365. Today is on collaboration. We've done one on productivity, and you're very welcome to kind of catch that one as well. And we've got one more to come as well, which will be looking particularly at a legal tech solution that LOD has worked with in Office 365. So it's a great one to do all three parts, and welcome back if this is your second, and welcome if this is your first. So it leaves me now to briefly introduce your presenters today. Dave Curtin, who's a Director of Legal Operations and Tech at LOD. Hi, Dave. Great to see you back again. And Amanda Fajerman, who's the Head of Legal Tech at LOD. Hi, Amanda. Great to see you again too. I'm going to disappear off the screen now and put myself on mute. Again, welcome. And I know you're going to enjoy this one. I'm definitely going to be watching it in the background. So welcome, Dave and Amanda.
Thanks, Terry. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Terry said, my name is Dave Curtin. Both Amanda and I are lawyers who've worked in a number of roles in private practice and in-house over the years. In our current roles, we specialise in helping lawyers improve how they work using process improvement and technology. So today, Amanda and I are here to show you how to get the most out of some popular Microsoft collaboration tools, focusing on 5 apps: To-Do, Planner, Teams, SharePoint, and Delve. So for those who attended that first session that Terry mentioned, that was really looking at primarily getting the most out of Microsoft apps at an individual level. Today, we're going to drill down a bit more on collaboration and working effectively as a team. As always, with these sort of sessions, it's difficult to find the sweet spot for everyone. Our approach is really to focus on simple tips and tricks to help you get the most out of these apps. There's always going to be a mix of comfort levels with the technology, so it may be for you a mix of refresher training and hopefully some new learning. We have a bit of ground to cover, so we'll try to move as quickly as possible. As Terry touched on, it will be a recording if you do need to go back. And please feel free to shoot questions through. Depending on how they come through, we'll answer them in context if that makes sense, or we might have some Q&A at the end. If you've still got unanswered questions at the end of this session, we'll share our details, and please feel free to get in touch and just to connect with us as well if you need any additional help. So just quickly, why Microsoft? The vast majority of lawyers do use Microsoft. It's incredibly powerful software. Most people underutilize those capabilities. LOD is a Microsoft partner, the only law firm in the world to have that status as far as we know. And the main reason we partner with Microsoft is that it offers a fantastic feature set that is constantly being improved. So you can do a lot with Microsoft, but today we're going to focus on the basic essentials for collaboration. One benefit of this suite of tools is its high degree of flexibility. People use the same tools to collaborate in a wide range of ways. How you and your colleagues choose to use these tools is going to depend on factors such as what you would like to accomplish, who you are collaborating with, what sort of work you're doing, and which application you prefer to use as your base.
Thanks, Dave. So at its core, as Dave mentioned, Microsoft is an ecosystem of interrelated apps for productivity, collaboration, and enterprise-wide data management. And you can see that Microsoft is constantly releasing new developments and upgrades, and it often supersedes a competitor in one swoop as it adds another dimension to its lineup. And you can just see how impressive that lineup is here. And as you click through to the next slide, you can also see how simple it is in terms of the user interface. So just by going to office.com, you've got a portal to launch for the creation of content, as well as the entry point for all the apps that are available, whether those apps are Office 365 apps, business apps, any third-party apps that are integrated. Those business apps are things that we do, such as LOD 365, where they're customized business applications. So it's a central place, if you click through to the next slide, Dave, a central place for any sort of productivity. Now, most lawyers are familiar with those apps. We use them in our day-to-day jobs. If you click through to a couple more steps, you can see here that we recommend that if you're not already using these other apps as part of the as part of the Microsoft Office 365 suite, that you do. And it's so interesting that in the last few years, previously, if you wanted to integrate with any of these third-party applications, you had to do a custom API. And now, thanks to Power Automate, integrations are built in, they're native, and it's a simple connector. And without any of the inherent security or data risks that were previously involved in doing a custom API, let alone the CapEx or OpEx costs that were previously involved. So moving to the next slide, you can see that this is another way of breaking up this data. We've broken it up here into those apps that Dave mentioned are basic but often underutilized productivity apps. And today we're focusing on the second row, the collaboration tools. But there's probably a bit of an overlap between those tools which are sort of personal or team productivity or collaboration. And I guess there's no right or wrong for what apps you use for what purpose. We've developed some best practice guidelines, but there certainly is an overlap between the apps, and the use cases for what apps you use when can be quite complex. So consider this as a bit of inspiration rather than prescription.
Thanks, Amanda. So in our work with lawyers and legal teams all around the world to improve the way they work, we work with people in all sorts of contexts, including private practice, in-house, and in semi-legal areas like compliance, procurement, etc. In terms of collaboration, some of the main areas where we see people struggling with document management, including things like creating, storing, and sharing work, using templates and playbooks to leverage existing knowledge within organizations and work more efficiently together, managing version control, and wasting time searching for information. Obviously, remote working is creating new challenges for all of us. Pre-COVID, most teams were already struggling with issues including task collaboration and project management. COVID has, I think, really just exacerbated those existing challenges and has also created other new challenges, such as how do you work effectively without having the same level of face-to-face engagement that you're used to. In some cases, particularly Melbourne, that's reduced from seeing each other all day long, as Amanda and I used to do, to I haven't seen this person in a face-to-face context all year, and I'm actually not sure when I will next see them, which is true of Amanda and me too. So when you very rarely see each other in person, how do you plan and coordinate work, including sharing updates and making sure that you're all aligned and you're clear on where things are up to. In terms of the benefits, I suppose, of Microsoft, because most people already have it on their tech stack, most of the teams we talk to are very interested in getting more value from the tech that they already have before they go through the complexity of buying new tech. So it's very common for us to hear questions such as, how can I better leverage that existing tech stack, starting with Microsoft?
Thanks, Dave. So everyone has seen a massive increase in the use of Teams over the last few months. So it's gone from 32 million in February through to 44 million and then 75 million in April. We don't have the stats as at November, but that trajectory probably slowed down a little bit. And there's been a lot of things that happened as a result. And a lot of that is to do with the fact that a lot of teams rushed into implementing Teams, and they didn't set up Teams with the right parameters, with the right governance, with the right controls, with the right naming conventions or permissions. So what we've seen is that with proper design you can actually use Teams far more effectively. But there was this rush of, is Teams an alternative to Slack, or is Teams an alternative to Skype for Business? And the answer is it's probably all of those things and a lot more. Teams is really Microsoft's workhorse, and it is also the fastest growing application for Microsoft at the moment. You can use it for video conferencing and phone calls. You can call people individually. You can call people simultaneously as part of a chat. You can use Calendar to schedule meetings, sync with your Outlook for seamlessly connecting people and checking their schedule. You can share screens, you can share files, and again, sync to SharePoint for the easy retrieval and reference of information, files, documents, any sort of knowledge or any sort of artifacts that you're working on as a team. As I said, it replaces instant messaging, so you can use it for chat functionality. And we've seen a 70% reduction in email volume through the use of chat for internal communications. And we really recommend it because not only does it clear your inbox, it also gives clarity and priority to external client communications. So it really improves the productivity of the team by making it quicker and easier for you to respond not only to the client, but also to internal communications. You can use it to share notes and create notes. You can also link to custom integrations like Power Apps or Power Automate, wikis, to have self-service portals from directly within Teams. So by connecting your Teams channels to tabs for related apps like Planner, Calendars, Wiki Notes, you can really create that central hub, that central source of activity for all information and all activity related to a project. And I'll show you how one of the most recent releases is how Microsoft, Dave, if you just click the button, how Microsoft has combined tasks and Planner into one central place. So often a question that we get asked is which tool when? And there's a big distinction between whether or not Teams is storing your tasks or just and storing the information or managing it. And here's a bit of a cheat sheet. Teams is for the big picture task management in your hub for your work. So it really is that central access point or entry point into the information. It doesn't store the information itself. It displays it or it links it. It's like a skin. So you've got SharePoint for storing and displaying the information through sites, through document libraries, through lists. You've got OneNote. Again, it's a storage and a display of information, but this time it's more like an online notebook or sharing in a less structured form the information that you're trying to present. And the last two buckets fall into a bit more of a project management category. And this is where Microsoft has taken project management skills and brought it to the people. It's taken it away from a mysterious IT project management tool and made it accessible. It's as an easy, everyday project management tool. In Planner, you've got Kanban-style buckets of information that provides rich information about tasks. And you can also have a personalized view of your tasks, whereas To Do is a little bit more of a granular, day-to-day personal task management. And it's mainly just for you. It's mainly for your eyes. It's how you are going to digest and work on the tasks that are on your to-do list. So you can really centralize all your tasks and activities through Teams. So just clicking through to the next slide, I'll give you a bit of a demo of what To Do can offer. So everyone has a to-do list in some shape or form, if it's a personal to-do list, a shopping list, a work list. And in today's day and age, managing your to-do list is more than just a soft skill. You can see in the demo as it runs that you can add tasks to your to-do list. You can move tasks around by creating various different buckets. You can go into a task and add rich data about that task, so you can mark it as important. You can add it to the list of activities that you're going to work on that day. You can break down a task into a number of different activities. And you can see there, you can have as much or as little information that you want to capture about the task that you're working on. And then you can scroll through the various views and see what are the tasks that are planned for the day? What are the tasks that I've got on? What are the tasks that I want to assign to various people? You can sort them by various metrics like due date. And one of the really great features is your ability to tag or flag an email. And as you see there, as I flick over to my email, if I flag an email, it'll automatically appear in my task list under flagged emails. And it's a really great way of clearing your inbox, giving it a due date. You can see the information in the email straight from your to-do. It's also going to pull in any planned activities from Planner. So you have a list of all the items on your to-do list in one central place. You can also create groups of lists. So within a particular project, you can have a new project, you can drag and drop lists of tasks into various project buckets and work on your to-do list in any manner or form. Then moving over to the next slide, there's Planner. The purpose of Planner is for group activities or team-based activities. So Dave, if you click through the next slide, you can see a bit of a demo there. You can see I've got various buckets of activities here, and I can create different buckets. Now I've got buckets here which are in progress, doing, closed and resolved. But you can add buckets, you can create new tasks, you can assign tasks to other people, and that's really where you're going to use Planner. If you've got a group of activities or a group of a project or an initiative, and you want to work with many people, especially if those people are not within the legal team, you can create tasks, assign it to people, add priorities, update the status, add notes, break down a task into a number of steps, have those steps displayed on the card, add comments, and then as those tasks change status, move them into various buckets. Now, these tasks may be, your buckets may be sort of a status of in progress or closed, as I've got here. You can also have statuses or buckets like do, doing, done, whatever is reflective of the nature of the work that you're doing or the type of project that you're working on. You can also have the charts and the schedules to show that view of how the information changes and assign tasks into your day-to-day calendar. You can see there now in Teams is bringing together my Planner tasks and my personal to-do tasks all in one central place. And Microsoft is going to be renaming this Planner as Tasks soon. You can see that in blue highlighted. But again, from this one central view, I can manage all the tasks, group them by various buckets, display charts, so I've got a visual of how many tasks are in progress, and assign tasks to my schedule so that I can manage the order that I do tasks based on what's most important and what's due. As I said before, initially when Teams was released, there was a lot of confusion about when a team should be created. Now, your team is essentially your high-level bucket of information. You want to create teams with a bit of structure. The first step is to understand who the purpose and the audience of the team, and everything, if you've got that bedded down, everything's going to flow from that. So what is the purpose of the team? And that's going to underline how, when, and why you create your teams. Now, you can be a member of 1,000 teams, but you probably don't want to. You want to create your teams to be high level and purpose driven. And you should think, what are the things that I want to collaborate on? What are the information I want to share? With who do I want to share that information? What level of access do they need? So that in your team, you're collaborating with the same group of people on a number of different activities. So you don't want to create separate teams for each initiative. If it's the same group of people, it's going to be more logical to create a different channel. So you want to create a consistent naming convention for the teams so you can have your structure so that the team labels are descriptive enough, but also flexible enough to be scalable and maintainable as you grow. If you've got too many teams, it's going to become unmanageable. So the same story that we have with SharePoint or file management systems, with people saying to us, I don't know where to go, I don't know where to look. You don't want to replicate that problem in Teams. You want to have specific purpose-driven teams with various channels that are descriptive enough, but at the same time scalable and maintainable. So your teams are essentially your channels or topics of conversation. Within each channel, you can then have various tabs, and that's bringing together all the information about that particular initiative or topic or project, your files, your notes, your tasks, your planner, all in one central place.
Okay, so now I'm going to go through just a couple of basics, starting with how to set up a Teams meeting. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can do it from Outlook or directly from the Teams app. So to start with Outlook, if you open your Outlook calendar, you should see a button on the ribbon that says New Teams Meeting, such as that shown in the green box here. Clicking that button brings up a normal Outlook meeting invitation, but with the location set to Teams. At the bottom of the meeting invitation, you'll see links for attendees to join the meeting using a link and computer audio, or they can dial in using their phone. This is quite helpful if people lose web connectivity during a meeting. The meeting details include things like a meeting ID and a PIN, which can be customized depending on things like your security settings. Another way you can set up the Teams meeting from Outlook is to create a normal Outlook meeting. And once you've created that meeting, you can make it a Teams meeting by clicking on the Teams meeting icon shown at the top here. So you can do this when you first create the meeting, or you can go back and do it later on. And that, again, that's useful if, for example, you've created a placeholder or you intended to meet face-to-face and later on you realize it's going to be actually better if you just all dial in. Going to the alternative way to set up a Teams meeting from the Teams app. To do this, you open the Teams app. On the left-hand side, you can see a ribbon. The green box here shows a calendar icon, which if you click will bring up your Outlook calendar. So to schedule a future meeting, you choose New Meeting, but you can also click Meet Now if you're wanting to meet straight away. This can be useful if, for example, you're on the phone and you realize I really need to get not only Amanda, but also Luke and Anthony on this call. So you can just dial people in straight away. So you don't go through the process of waiting to emails to arrive, open them, accept them, etc. You can just dial people straight in. One really helpful aspect of scheduling meetings using the Teams app is its built-in tool to help find a meeting time that works for all attendees. Outlook has something similar, but in my view, it works better in Teams. Both apps will show you when people are unavailable, but Teams will be a bit more proactive, I suppose, in suggesting alternate times when they are available. If you want more options, you click on the scheduling assistant at the top and you can open up the calendars of your attendees. So in that way, as with Outlook, you can browse to find a time that suits everyone. Now I'm just going to cover a few basics of how to share content when you're using Teams. On the right-hand side of the green box at the top there, you can see a square with a down arrow. That's the share tray. If you click on that icon, it'll bring up a menu that looks something like the boxes in the black section on this slide. So you can share your screen in several ways. On the left-hand side, you can see the heading Desktop, and beneath that, Screens 1 and 2. So with a two-screen setup, this is sharing either screen, and it shares the whole screen, whatever is shown on it. So if I open and close windows, they will be shared so other people can see those windows opening and closing. So this is good, particularly if you need to jump around between sections, but a word of warning, you need to tidy up whatever's on your desktop before you use this view. If you minimize the screen and you've got sensitive emails or other content on your screen, it will be broadcast to all of the meeting attendees. To the right of desktop, you can see the heading window. That allows you just to share the app window, regardless of whether you drag something in front of it or put something, you minimize it, etc. So here, the main thing to be aware of, I suppose, is that you don't change windows and start talking about the changed view while your audience is still staring at the original window and wondering what you're banging on about, which has definitely happened to me a few times in the past. On the right-hand side, you can also browse specific presentations, which you can share within the app as opposed to just sharing your screen. You can also do things like share a whiteboard using things like either the native Microsoft whiteboard or other good collaboration apps such as Mural or InVision. They've got some increasingly great functionality, which are really helpful for working in a remote context. So going back to the green box at the top there, you can also choose to turn your camera on and off. And let's be honest, there are times when we all need a break from being on camera. One thing to be aware of is that if you answer a Teams call on your phone, it may not be obvious to the other person that you've answered on your phone. So you might realize that at the end of the call, as again I've done, that the other person had their camera on and they might be wondering why you didn't have your camera on. So just something to be conscious of depending where you answer the Teams call. So here, looking at the green box, you can see an icon showing people. That icon shows you who's in the meeting. It's helpful, particularly if there's large numbers of people in a meeting. You can add other people to the meeting by inviting new participants. And you can do this either by entering their name if they're in your internal directory, or you can also dial their phone number if you need to. If you need to do things like capture the attendee list, for example, if you need to work out who needs a copy of a presentation after a meeting, you can download the attendee list using the link icon in the lower green box on the right-hand side there. The three green dots in the box here brings up a menu of options, including device settings, which you may need to adjust if you're using things like external speakers, headphones, or an external camera. You can adjust sound levels or mute here. Meeting options allows you to do things like control who can present and whether additional attendees to a meeting have to be admitted from a waiting lobby by someone already in the meeting or whether they can just connect straight in. Meeting notes allows you to take and share notes. You can edit those notes with word style formatting options. You can open up the Teams whiteboard here and start drawing, adding text and notes. You can also share files in this chat. Other elements on your menu of options include choosing whether you want to view participants in gallery mode or together mode, which is a new sort of post-COVID or mid-COVID development. I personally find this easier on the eyes. I guess it's a matter of personal choice. You can also do things like add captions or start recording. If you do start recording, Teams will show a red message to the other attendees so they are aware it's being recorded, and obviously it's good etiquette to check everyone's okay to start recording before you do so, particularly during a pandemic when they might still be in their morning exercise gear. You can hit the mic button to do things like mute or unmute, which is a good tool to use during large meetings. Also good for large meetings is the raised hand button to coordinate questions. If someone is creating a lot of noise, maybe unwittingly, you can mute them, and it can be oddly satisfying when you mute out their shouting family members, as I'm sure people have done to me. The speech bubble icon allows you to chat with other meeting participants. Be aware that there's two chats you can run at the same time. You can chat within the meeting, or outside the meeting. So chatting outside the meeting can be really helpful if you need to communicate only with some meeting attendees. Obviously, be very careful not to get these confused. The last thing you want to do is to share your confidential communications in a public meeting chat, or a more public meeting chat. If you open up the chat, you have two windows. This is the standard view, which has some basic formatting options, including options to mark something as urgent, add an attachment, choose from some of the creepiest emojis going around, add GIFs and stickers, etc. Or if you click on the format button, which looks like an A with a paintbrush, you get some additional functionalities. So more things like bullets, indenting, text formatting. You can also link documents, and you can use some of the shortcuts which we shared in the last session. And again, we're happy to share those after this session if you didn't attend the first one. So things like inserting hyperlinks, etc., you can do, but this is a more visual interface if you prefer to work that way. And linking documents is a good practice, I think, because it does encourage people to work off a central shared document, which is saved in SharePoint, rather than starting to create different versions of documents saved in other places like their personal drives or desktops. You can also do other things such as insert tables, undo, redo, etc. So chat's going to occur between as many people as you want. A handy collaboration piece is being able to chat among a group. As Amanda touched on, this reduces the amount of emails flying around, particularly with people on CC. If you want to add people in, you can see their availability, which is usually shown in red, green, or amber. Something like a red dot typically means that they're already in a meeting. But if you don't want to be disturbed, for example, if you've got a chunk of time set aside to work on a particularly thorny issue, you can also change your status setting. So if you do that, Teams will send a message to the during the chosen times. If someone messages you or mentions you, which they do with an asterisk, sorry, with an @ symbol, followed by your name. Over to you, Amanda.
Sure. As I said before, each channel can have a number of different tabs, and you can add tabs, and they can either be built-in Office 365 tabs like SharePoint or even Power Apps, OneNote, etc. They can also be third-party apps, and so there really is, almost anything that you can think of which is built within or integrated with Microsoft, albeit project management, knowledge management, or time management. They're just some of the examples of the way in which Teams is bringing together all the activities, all the files, all the information within one channel. It's also mobile friendly, so it's a free download from the App Store or the Android Store, and you can do everything that you can do on the desktop. You can do from the mobile app, and it's an incredibly important way of being able to chat, communicate, schedule meetings, share your documents if you've downloaded the Office 365 apps on your mobile. So clicking through to a bit of a live demo of Teams, you can see in this demo here, it's just one of the ways in which David and I are communicating. We've got a chat. I've got a chat just with him. I've got a chat with him and Luke. And I can write things to him, write things to both of them, tag him. He'll get a notification once I've tagged him. And I can also share links to documents. And again, as he was alluding to, by sharing a live link to a document, when he clicks on that, he's working on the same version of the document as everybody. It means that there's an automatic audit history, the version control, and there's no need to save that document and rename it every time you make changes to it. You can see there in that screen, it's an example of some of the apps that I've added. And one example of a business app that you might want to add is a form, a Microsoft form or an intake form straight from the app. And that really sort of covers off a short insight into Teams, and now moving on to SharePoint, because there's quite a bit of confusion between the overlap between Teams and SharePoint. As I said, SharePoint is where you're storing the information, and Teams is more of a skin or an access point or an entry point into your SharePoint repositories. SharePoint really underpins the storage of your documents and your files, but its flexibility and its functionality really rivals any of the bespoke legal document management software on the market. There really is no need to have some of those, traditionally we needed to have things like iManage, NetDocuments, etc. for document management. The functionality which is inherent in SharePoint really rivals those tools. And it allows you not only to collaborate on shared work items, it automatically saves your updates to create an audit history. It syncs with your Windows Explorer. So while being cloud-based and mobile-friendly, when you're working on your desktop, the experience is almost unchanged. So some basics on SharePoint. A site collection is essentially a website that contains various different web parts, whether they're libraries, lists, newsreels, calendars, etc. So often legal teams will have a legal corporate SharePoint site. Sitting underneath that, you'll have a whole lot of sub-sites, and they're like nested SharePoint sites or any site that lives underneath a parent site. And that will also contain a number of web parts, such as quick links, newsreels, or relevantly, most commonly as lawyers, we're using document lists or libraries. So under your documents, under your libraries or lists, you may have document libraries. So that's where you're going to store, create, upload, and collaborate on essentially documents, whether they're PDFs, Excel, Word documents, etc. Or you might have lists. And so a list might be a calendar entry or a list of agreements or a list of NDAs, etc. And essentially, this is what we call the information architecture. So the information architecture is the art and science of labeling and organizing your content in a way that users can easily navigate. And it really forms the bread and butter of your system. If you get this right, it's really going to underpin how quickly and easily your users can find and save the information they're using and information they're looking for. And it's really going to influence the amount of effort that you need to maintain and support your document management system in your future. So the most common feedback that we hear from legal teams is that Dave, if you just click on the next slide, click through, they start off with something simple. They start with a simple information architecture, but as it grows organically over time, everyone's individual assessments of where things should be filed or how things should be saved ends up with quite a multi-level hierarchy of folders with no clear structure. And it means that unless you're the person that saved that document in that folder, no one else knows where it means. It also means that if you have your folders structured, let's say on a year basis, and you've got subfolders for customer names and a subfolder for the various contracts in the projects that you're working on, it's almost impossible to say, show me all the contracts that this party or this company has executed with customer C, A, B, without looking in every single folder year by year to try and find that information. So that a good IA is going to enable people to easily find the information that they're looking for. So a couple of rules of thumb that we work with when we're discussing or designing this with legal teams is your top level documents should be purpose driven, and you should ask yourself, what's the type of content you need to store? Who should have access to that content? And what level of access should they need? And how can I categorize that content together? So you don't want to create too many high level folders, because if you overload your folders at too many high levels, you're going to end up with quite a complex system. But at the same time, if you have too many lower level folders, the system may end up performing poorly and require a lot of maintenance. And you'll end up with the same problem that you were trying to overcome before with too many folders. So your metadata is essentially another aspect of your SharePoint site that should be a bit like online shopping. Imagine if you could search for your content or search for your folders in the same way that you filter and refine your search results when you're looking to buy something or book accommodation. You want to be able to say, you'd be familiar with things like date modified by file type, file size, etc. They're the out-of-the-box metadata fields, but you can also create your own custom metadata fields. For example, I want to find information based on contract value, like you might want to filter based on price, or I want to find things which are located close to me in the same way that you might want to filter your contracts based on business region or business location. You want to filter based on brand in the same way that you'd want to filter based on vendor name or matter type, etc. So if you can, it's as simple as adding a new custom column in SharePoint that you can get some of that rich data. And as you click through to the next slide, here's an example where I've got a document library, I've got metadata fields based on document type, expiry date, execution status, whether or not a document is final or not final, executed or not executed. These are the refiners that can really make the difference within a legal team on whether or not they can trust the information that they're finding, whether or not that is the final version or the most up-to-date version of a document, as well as saving them countless hours in time and being able to apply these refiners and filtering your search results to get the information that you need. A bit of a live demo in SharePoint. If you click through to the next slide, you can see here, Dave has sent me an email and said, I've added you as a comment. And if I click on that email, I'm taken to the live version of that document within SharePoint. As I save it, it's automatically going to save that document. You can see that Dave is working in the document at the same time. As he makes changes to the document, that's going to appear in real time on my screen. And I can also make changes to the document at the same time. I can tag him in comments, asking him to approve or review various clauses as we're collaborating on the document together. And as I do that, he'll also receive an email notification to say he's been tagged, and he can run through those comments, resolve them or close them or reply to them so that everyone can be working on the same document. Now, with a version history that's inherent in Microsoft, you've got an audit history of all the changes that have been made to the document, who made them and when, so that you can always go back to a previous version and restore that version or save a copy of that version if you want to, if you're negotiating a contract with another party and you want to check what changes have been made. So these tools, which are inherent in SharePoint, are really powerful ways of being able to collaborate on a document together.
So I just want to show you really quickly about some of the SharePoint basics in practice. So the things I'm going to look at quickly here are how to set up a SharePoint site and the purposes you can use a SharePoint site for, including as a document management system, as Amanda was outlining, and as an intranet site where you can share information with your colleagues. So as Amanda's outlined, SharePoint has a huge amount of functionality, so we're just going to focus on these specific use cases at the moment. So to get to SharePoint, I go to office.com, I then click into SharePoint, and I can now create a site. There are a couple of default templates. I give my site a name and a description. I click finish, and that then brings up a blank template, which is a great place to start editing. So to do that, I click on the right-hand side, and I can now move around and edit and replace any of these tiles that are here. So I can do things like add a new section. And if I click on that plus sign above a section, I can navigate through a very large number of options. I can do things like insert images. You've got stock images, you can browse the web, you can look for things that are on theme for the issue that you want to insert. And then I can republish my site. So then I've got an intranet site where I can do things like create a news post, again, working from templates or from scratch as much as I want. So that's a great way to share information with colleagues. I can also do things like add a document library. So this then brings up the bones of a document management system. Now, as Amanda correctly outlined, there are some really good principles to apply when you do this, but getting started can be very fast. So you can do things like create a folder. You can then create subfolders. I can create documents directly from SharePoint. They will be saved live into the library. I can also upload other documents. And I can undertake a number of steps in relation to the settings of these documents. So I can do things like rename them. Click. I can do one comment I'll probably just make about the naming convention, and again, Amanda alluded to this, is that the value of setting some ground rules at the early stage as to how you want to name things. So, for example, we tend to apply consistent rules, such as starting the document with the document type, whether it's a template, proposal, report, etc. Reference the name of your client, and then a description of the subject matter. Little things like that can be really helpful and can make sure you get the benefits of the search functionality. If you right-click on a document, you can do things like obviously download the document. You can pin it to the top if it's a document that will be used frequently. You can grant access to other people, including managing their editing rights. You can share the document. And again, you've got options to the level of functionality that you allow them and who you send it to. You can also get the version history of a document. And if you wanted to click into any of those versions, it would restore those previous versions. Or you can do things like set up alerts if a document changes. So, for example, if you had a template that shouldn't change without someone signing off on it, then that could be a good way to get notified if a document that you need to be aware of is changing. So that's a really quick whistle-stop tour around SharePoint. You can do a huge amount of things with this software that will deliver fantastic collaboration functionality in terms of managing work and managing the documents that underpin that work.
Delve is one of those examples of quite a commonly underutilized Office 365 app. It's there, it's part of the suite, and I find it quite useful to find information, to find documents that my colleagues are working on when I don't know where they might have saved it. So we talk about sort of three different categories of information. You know the document exists and you know where it's going to be. You know the document exists, but you don't know where it is, or you don't know where the document, if the document exists or where it might be at all. So by going into Delve, I can say, not only show me all my recent documents, but I can also click on my colleagues and say, okay, show me all the documents that Dave's been working on. So if I know he's been working on something, but I don't know where he saved it, I can go in, I can see information about his personal profile, the type of documents, whether or not it's a document, an attachment, and I can apply filters to say, only show me email attachments, only show me Word, PDF, PowerPoint, Excel documents, etc. Obviously, you only have access to the documents according to the permissions that have been set within your user profile, but it's just another way of saying, let's collaborate on documents together. Let's find the information that our colleagues are working on together. So I'll just quickly touch on some of the things that we're going to be talking about in the next session. We're really going to be taking this concept of collaboration one step further. As Terry said at the start, with LOD 365, we've done a number of things where we've actually utilised the Power Platform as a way of extending the knowledge management, the matter management, or the information management that legal teams are using, and creating a customised customized apps for teams to be able to manage their contracts, manage their document, automate workflows, automate the generation of contracts, as well as the automation of workflows, for instance, a delegation of authority or approval matrix, so that teams can quickly and easily have the information they need to manage their matters, handle capacity and triage, and improve loyal well-being. Because things like to-do lists, things like task management, as I said before, they're not only the soft skills that lawyers need as part of their jobs, they are actually integral to the way a legal team operates. A legal team relates to each other, collaborates, works with each other. It's going to improve client satisfaction and your own performance, a way of you managing your expectations with your stakeholders, and most importantly, improve lawyer well-being, because you're not feeling so out of control with the amount of work that you've got on. In this day and age, we're getting work fired at us from so many different directions. You get an email asking you to do something. You get a meeting action coming out of a meeting. You've got actions coming out of project updates, and being able to find a way to manage all that information, manage all the tasks and activities you have to do is incredibly integral. So I'll leave it there, and we've got a couple of minutes for any questions.
I've got a couple of quick ones too. They're kind of bigger overarching ones, I guess. One is with Teams, if you're using it or connecting with someone outside your organisation, are you likely to run into any kind of firewall issues? Is there anything that you can do about that or alert people to that, or is it indeed even an issue really?
So not so much firewall issues, but I guess the caveat that you need to think about when you are creating teams and using Teams external to your organisation is it is going to depend on the organisation's policies, whether or not the extent to which you can add externals in as part of your team. So I'm part of a number of external organisations' teams. When I'm in my Teams app, I can flick between my LOD Teams environment, client A, client B, and I only have access to the team channel that client has given me permission to access. But some organisations have limits and restrictions on their ability to add externals into Teams.
Gotcha. And yeah, sorry, my shorthand, but thank you for that. We've got a question here, and I'm just going to read it for either of you. Are there any built-in automations in 365 that can be used? Who'd like that one?
Amanda, do you want one?
Yeah, I'm sort of curious what sort of built-in automations. I'll discuss some automation, but I don't have. If the person who asked the question wants to expand a little bit on what built-in automations are, there are a lot of built-in automations to the extent that you can say, on this trigger, perform this action. Now you can do a lot of those things with Power Automate. It will give you the ability to say, on this trigger, perform this action. You can automatically set up, as an example that Dave said, an alert to say, do this, perform this action if this trigger happens, or if this document changes, or if this template changes, or even set up an email notification to say, I need an approval. So in the back end, there's an automation there to say this person needs to approve this document before it can get sent out. We will, in the next session, show you how you can automate documents using just Office 365 tools. It does require a premium connector. Dave, do you want to add anything to that?
No, maybe it's just helpful to add to that to say that when we think about automation, that includes things like workflows, documents, as well as tasks, and using tools like Power Automate, for example. It is very possible to do these sorts of create these automations yourself, and it's usually a question of being clear on the use case and what's the best way to get to that outcome.
We've got, thank you for that. We've got one more question which we'll take. We've got about a minute to wrap. So the question is there still a role for OneDrive given the functionality of SharePoint? Is the premise of collaboration that all documents are created and saved in SharePoint, but not all are shared?
Sure. So yes, the principle of SharePoint is that everything that is shared, you can set up your structure so that you give access and permission to certain people. You can change access and permission by exception so that you can share documents or restrict documents on an exception basis. And OneDrive is essentially cloud storage, which Microsoft gives you as part of your suite. I wouldn't necessarily replace the functionality of SharePoint because you can use it in conjunction with SharePoint. I use OneDrive for my dirty laundry, my personal documents, my personal workspace that I don't want living in my LOD environment. And I can use OneDrive and share documents by exception within OneDrive. Whereas with SharePoint, my base premise thinking is everyone can see it, everyone can access it, unless I, do something else, or unless I turn it off, or unless I limit access. With OneDrive, no one can see it. It's just my personal workspace unless I share it.
Amanda and Dave, sadly, we have to bring it all to an end there. Fabulous session. My head is buzzing with all of the amazing stuff that we can do. So thank you very much for that. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for attending. Loving seeing you back here. This digital literacy series and this three-parter that we're partnering with LOD on really has proven to be incredibly popular and not surprisingly. So thanks for attending. And again, our thanks to LOD. The third part of this series that we've mentioned and Amanda gave you a sneak peek into is on the 11th of November. So do come back and spend some time with us for that third part as well. And we'll be announcing that in the normal kind of CLI media. So have a look on, LinkedIn, Twitter or Facebook. You'll see announcements about this, and also obviously when we publish this as well, you'll find that there. So on that note, and sadly, we have to say goodbye, but we'll be back next month. So again, huge thank you to you, Amanda and Dave. It's been great hanging out with you, and thanks everyone for coming as well, and we'll see you again soon.